My name is Lila Murphy, and at 34 years old, I had chosen the dimly lit corner of La Lumiere, our favorite French bistro, for a reason. Sitting opposite my husband Evan, I traced every familiar line of his face as if memorizing a painting I thought I knew, only to discover cracks I'd never noticed. 7 years of marriage, and here we were, wine glinting in crystal glasses, the muted hum of conversations, the clinking of cutlery, everything seemingly perfect. I'd made the reservation 2 months ago, a testament to my hope that tonight could feel like more than the routine of work, bills, and the endless minutiae of life. 7 years. That should be something, shouldn't it? Evan barely looked up from his menu. He had a habit of drifting away, even when he was sitting next to me. So, I tried, forcing the warmth I felt in my chest to spill into my voice. I've planned a little getaway next month. Beach, spa, a proper anniversary. What do you think? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sounds nice, but I'll probably be in the office a lot. My schedule's been crazy with Clara. Clara? His boss. Evan had been working under her for nearly 6 months now, though she always seemed to infiltrate every conversation. I nodded, forcing my own smile. That's great. Just don't forget tonight, I said, trying to anchor him in the moment. Evan leaned back, the chair creaking under him, and chuckled. Honestly, Lila, Clara's amazing. She's really helped me with my presentations, my client strategies. She's just so attentive. You know, unlike some people who barely notice their own anniversary. The words were casual, but they stung. I felt my chest tighten. Attentive? I repeated carefully. You mean mentoring you? Oh, it's more than that, he said, his tone light, almost teasing. She notices things no one else does. You could learn a thing or two, you know. The wine trembled in my glass. My heartbeat, erratic, echoing in my ears, drowned out the background clatter of the restaurant. Other couples laughed nearby, their joy a cruel contrast to the frost creeping over our table. I forced my gaze to his. Evan, this is our night. Can we, I don't know, keep it about us? He shrugged. I'm just being honest. She values my potential, Lila. She sees me. I swallowed hard. My own voice was steadier than I felt. I value you too, every day. He smirked faintly, almost dismissively. You say that, but honesty matters more, doesn't it? A tremor ran through me, subtle at first, then growing. Something in his casual admiration, the way he talked about her. It wasn't just professional. I can't believe you're comparing me to her, I said, my voice quivering, on our anniversary. His expression hardened. You're imagining things. I'm just stating facts, you know. You could stand to be more open-minded about the people around you. Open-minded. I laughed, a brittle sound. Open-minded? About you and your boss? Really, Evan? He leaned back further, the movement deliberate, distancing. Honestly, Lila, I think you're insecure. You overreact. You always do. The words were sharp, each one a deliberate cut. I felt my throat tighten, my chest constricting. The restaurant seemed to shrink, every gaze magnifying my humiliation. Evan, I tried, but the sound of my own voice seemed tiny, insignificant. You know what? I'm sick of pretending you're enough for me, he said suddenly, loud enough that heads turned. His words splintered the fragile calm. I can't do this anymore. Time slowed. I watched him gather his things with mechanical detachment, the chair scraping against the tiled floor, a wineglass tipping over and staining the linen napkin, then the crisp white tablecloth with deep red. The color bloomed like a warning signal. My fingers curled around the stem of my glass, gripping it until it was almost painful. Around us, the murmurs grew. Someone cleared their throat awkwardly. My humiliation was public, intimate, a spectacle I had never imagined I'd endure. Maybe you should go, I said quietly, my voice tight with rage and disbelief. He smirked again, the movement small but cruel. Maybe I will. Make it easier for you. And then he was gone, leaving the bill and a small crowd staring at me. Pity, judgment, curiosity, all swirling in their eyes. I could feel my face burning, the heat of humiliation settling like lead in my stomach. I sat there, stunned, as the echo of his footsteps faded into the night outside. The restaurant resumed its rhythm, laughter and music carrying on, indifferent. But I was frozen, trapped in a private storm. I had always trusted Evan. I had always believed in the life we built together. And now, sitting in the wreckage of 7 years reduced to a single stormy dinner, I realized trust is a fragile thing, and it could shatter in a heartbeat. When I returned home, the silence of our apartment was almost suffocating. His absence was loud, tangible, each shadow a reminder. I poured a glass of water but didn't drink. My mind raced. The little coincidences that had once seemed harmless, the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the fleeting excuses, now assembled themselves into a troubling mosaic. Heather. The name drifted unbidden into my thoughts. Evan had mentioned it once, months ago, almost in passing. Her husband, a lawyer. Why did that detail feel important now? I felt a spark, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Not anger, not yet. Suspicion. A quiet, cold suspicion that demanded investigation, truth, exposure. I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg. Not tonight. Tonight I would begin. I started by retrieving the phone bills, the emails, the subtle breadcrumbs Evan had left behind. Every text, every message, every location ping, anything that could confirm what my intuition now whispered. The thought sent a shiver through me, a mix of fear and exhilaration. For the first time in years, I felt the clarity of purpose. My husband's betrayal, the humiliation at the restaurant, the sense of being unseen, all of it was a call to action. I would not let this go unnoticed. I would not let him think this was over. And somewhere, deep in the back of my mind, a darker thought settled. The more I dug, the more I might uncover, and the consequences could ripple far beyond us. I leaned back in the empty apartment, staring at the faint light of the street lamp filtering through the curtains. A plan was forming. It was slow, meticulous, deliberate. I would collect the evidence. I would uncover the truth. And when the time came, Evan would see exactly what it meant to cross me. Tonight was the beginning. The apartment was quiet, almost oppressively so. Every creak in the floorboard felt amplified. Every muted hum of the refrigerator a drumbeat counting down the moments since Evan had stormed out. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, phone in hand, and a quiet resolve settling in my chest like steel. I started small. Text messages first. I went through his phone while he was gone, hesitant at first, as if each swipe were a betrayal of our shared life. But I couldn't stop. There they were. Casual words that had once seemed harmless, now heavy with implication. Late-night messages to Clara, his boss, mentions of meeting up, checking in, just us, and sometimes emojis that felt deliberate, personal. I paused, exhaling slowly. This was no longer imagination. This was proof. And if there was proof, there had to be more. Credit card statements, restaurant receipts, even the florist's invoice for Valentine's Day. Nothing seemed accidental anymore. Every piece fit together, a pattern forming, a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see, but now couldn't look away from. I realized I was not enough. Not in Evan's eyes, not in the world he had begun to inhabit without me. And yet, the deeper I looked, the more I felt a cold, precise clarity. My humiliation had a counterweight now, knowledge. 2 weeks later, I met Derek Shaw, a private investigator. I had been hesitant to go this far, but my gut told me that if I didn't, the full truth would slip away, hidden behind polite lies and professional facades. Derek was calm, methodical, a stark contrast to the chaos that churned inside me. He flipped open a leather folder and slid it across the table. Evan isn't the first, he said quietly, almost conversationally. He has a pattern. His boss isn't new to this either. She's had a similar involvement with other assistants before. I felt a chill. Other assistants? Yes, 3 previous cases, same company, same approach. It's consistent. Photos, schedules, receipts. Everything matches the behaviors you've already noticed. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice even. What about her husband? Derek raised an eyebrow. Lawyer, high profile, and extremely diligent. If he finds out, this will escalate fast. Legally, financially, professionally. A tight knot of anticipation and dread settled in my stomach. This was bigger than a marital spat. This was a storm waiting to hit, and I held the match. The next days were a blur. I became a shadow in my own home, meticulously cataloging every message, every credit card transaction, every vague excuse Evan had ever offered. I cross-referenced them with the private investigator's findings. Photographs showed him leaving restaurants late at night, locations pinged near Clara's office, never at home, receipts stacked like evidence in a courtroom. And there it was, pattern after pattern. Every affair had begun the same way, followed the same script. Flattery, attention, small professional nudges that slowly crossed lines, all perfectly calculated to appear innocent to anyone not paying attention. At night, I lay awake, mind racing. Part of me ached for the man I thought I knew, for the years of shared memories, the promises whispered in quiet bedrooms, the life we had built together. And yet another part of me thrummed with anticipation of exposure, of justice, of revenge, meticulously served. I contacted Henry, Clara's husband, discreetly. A lawyer, sharp, suspicious. Our conversation was cautious, fraught with unspoken tension. He didn't know everything, but he knew enough. Enough to understand that if the truth surfaced, the fallout would be catastrophic. Together we began strategizing. Derek gathered evidence with surgical precision. Photographs of Evan entering Clara's apartment, receipts for dinner dates late at night, subtle gestures caught on security footage. Each piece confirmed what I had feared and suspected. I remember staring at one image late at night, Evan, smiling as Clara brushed a hand over his shoulder in a parking garage that should have been empty. My chest tightened, not with love, not with grief, but with a sense of righteous fire. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was methodical, calculated, cold, and now I had the upper hand. Even as I compiled the evidence, I felt the emotional weight of every discovery. Each new photo, each new text was a punch to the gut, but it was also a reminder of what I deserved: honesty, respect, and recognition that I was no one's second choice. Derek and I worked in silence most nights, the apartment quiet except for the soft hum of the laptop. I made lists, notes, timelines. Every dinner receipt, every coffee meeting, every message was cataloged. The more I uncovered, the more my resolve hardened. And through it all, a small, dangerous thrill threaded through my despair. Evan would not see this coming. The humiliation, the exposure, the consequences, it would all arrive at the perfect moment, orchestrated meticulously by me. At one point, Derek leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You know," he said, "people think revenge is loud, messy, but the best revenge is quiet, methodical, precise. You're doing it right." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "It's not just revenge," I said softly. "It's justice." He nodded. "Justice, and you'll have plenty of it." For the first time in weeks, I slept, if only briefly. The storm outside, the betrayal, the humiliation, was still there, but now it had a shape, a direction. And when the time came, everything would fall into place. Evan and Clara would understand exactly what it meant to cross me. I knew it wouldn't be simple. There would be confrontation, there would be arguments, there would be more heartbreak, more anger. But I also knew this: nothing would surprise me anymore. The truth was now mine, and I would wield it with precision. And as I closed my laptop that night, feeling the weight of the investigation settle in my bones, I whispered into the empty apartment, "Soon you'll see." The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long stripes across my living room floor. I sat cross-legged on the sofa, laptop open, phone in hand, documents strewn across the coffee table. Every piece of evidence I had painstakingly collected, the texts, receipts, credit card statements, photos, was now organized into a comprehensive dossier. I wasn't trembling, I wasn't crying, I was quiet, focused. The storm of betrayal had transformed into something colder, sharper, resolve. The plan was simple but precise. I would confront Evan first, watch him squirm, feel the weight of what he had done. Then, using the evidence, I would alert Clara's husband, the company HR, and the board of directors. It was surgical, methodical, ruthless. I sent a brief text to Evan. "We need to talk. Home, now." He arrived 15 minutes later, hair slightly tousled, tie loosened, as if he had already been bracing for a mild argument, not the avalanche awaiting him. He stepped inside, casual on the surface, unaware of the depth of the trap. "Lila, hey," he said, voice trying to sound light, neutral. I held up a hand. "Sit. Don't speak yet." Confusion crossed his face just for a moment before irritation set in. What's this about? I gestured toward the documents on the table. This. He looked, first curious, then shocked. Then the irritation cracked into panic as he scanned the texts, receipts, and photos. I cut him off. You thought I didn't notice. You thought this could stay hidden. You were wrong. Every dinner, every late-night coffee, every touch you thought was private, it's all here. He stumbled back, running a hand through his hair. Lila, it's not what it looks like. I laughed, bitter and low. Not what it looks like? Evan, holding hands in a parking garage, dinner receipts, location logs, text messages flirting with Clara. Not what it looks like? His jaw tightened. You're overreacting. It was just work. Work, I repeated, letting the word hang like smoke. You've used that excuse before. It's the same script Clara used with her assistants. The same one you're playing now. He sank into the chair opposite me, muttering, I didn't think you'd find out. I didn't think I'd have to look, I said softly, but my voice carried steel. But you left me no choice. The confrontation was electric, every word a spark igniting memories of humiliation, betrayal, and disbelief. I watched him squirm as I revealed the extent of the investigation, the photos Derek had taken, the repeated patterns, Clara's prior affairs, the risk of legal exposure. His panic grew. Lila, please, we can fix this. It's private. We can handle this ourselves. No, I said. It's public now. It's not just our marriage. It's your career, your boss, her husband, the company. Everything you built on deceit will crumble, and you'll understand exactly what it feels like to be exposed. I sent an email I had drafted earlier to Clara's husband and HR. Within minutes, replies pinged on my phone. Acknowledgement, shock, and confirmation that the company would investigate immediately. The dominoes were in motion. Evan's face paled as he realized the full scope of his reckoning. Lila, you can't... You forced me into this, I said quietly. You made your choices. Now you'll live with them. Hours later, after phone calls, emails, and the initial HR inquiry, Evan and Clara were suspended, pending investigation. The office atmosphere, once familiar, became toxic for them overnight. Colleagues whispered in hallways. Managers avoided contact. The first wave of consequences had begun. I sat alone that evening, exhaustion hitting me like a physical weight. And yet, there was a grim satisfaction in knowing I had orchestrated this. I had taken the humiliation, the betrayal, and turned it into precision, a methodical delivery of justice. A few days later, Derek called with updates. The photos, the schedules, the testimonies from prior assistants, they had been compiled into a single, indisputable package. Legal exposure was imminent. I felt a strange mix of relief and trepidation. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about accountability, morality, the ripple effect of choices. Evan's panic, Clara's arrogance, all of it had set them on a path to ruin. That evening, Evan returned home, desperate, his composure gone. Lila, please, I stopped him. Don't. I've seen enough excuses to last a lifetime. He fell silent, the weight of reality pressing down. The man I had married, the one I trusted, was no longer the man sitting before me. Betrayal had changed him, irreversibly. Over the next week, HR completed their forensic review. Company laptops revealed thousands of inappropriate messages. Receipts corroborated unauthorized dinners. Security footage confirmed long private meetings in executive offices. The narrative I had uncovered became an irrefutable truth. Evan and Clara were terminated. Terminated. No suspension. No second chances. The full force of consequence had arrived, and I watched it unfold quietly, almost clinically. And yet, even in victory, there was a shadow of sorrow. The man I loved, the life I thought we had, was gone. In its place remained only the echo of betrayal, the residue of humiliation, and a cold, precise sense of justice served. I leaned back in the now empty apartment, the quiet hum of the city outside, a distant murmur. The storm had broken, and though the path ahead would still be fraught with emotional fallout, one thing was certain: I had reclaimed the narrative of my life. The power was mine. And somewhere, in the quiet, I allowed myself a small, hard smile. Evan had thought he could control the story. He was wrong. I had always been the author. The office had transformed overnight. Whispered conversations, cold glances, and subtle avoidance were now the norm for anyone associated with Evan and Clara. Their names were spoken cautiously, almost fearfully. The pattern of deceit, meticulously documented, had left an indelible mark. I watched from a distance as Derek delivered the final set of evidence to HR and legal. Every photograph, every message, every restaurant receipt, every prior assistant's testimony had been collated into an airtight dossier. The forensic IT review confirmed everything. Evan's laptop contained thousands of non-work-related messages. Clara's office had been misused for private encounters, and company resources had funded the affair. The consequences were swift and unforgiving. Both Evan and Clara were terminated immediately. There was no suspension, no chance to salvage their careers. Their professional worlds collapsed like sandcastles under a tide. I remember the day Evan tried to approach me at home. Desperate, the veneer of confidence stripped away. "Lila, please, I didn't allow him to finish. I've seen enough excuses to last a lifetime. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the weight of his actions press down like a physical force. The man I had married, the life I thought I shared, was gone. Only the residue of betrayal remained. Clara, the arrogant manipulator who had thought himself untouchable, fared no better. Word had reached his husband, a sharp, calculating lawyer who immediately filed for legal recourse. The affair activated a clause in their prenuptial agreement. Infidelity would forfeit the majority of Clara's marital assets. The judge had no patience for deceit or manipulation. Overnight, his financial empire crumbled. It was poetic, in the most brutal sense. The arrogance that had fueled their affairs, the belief that they could manipulate, cheat, and evade accountability, was finally met with the unflinching force of reality. As I sat in my apartment sipping tea, the emotional weight of the past weeks began to settle. There was sorrow, yes, the grief of lost trust, the ache of what could have been, but there was also clarity. Every tear shed, every sleepless night, every pang of betrayal had been transformed into a meticulous pursuit of justice. And justice had arrived, not messy or vengeful, but exacting and precise. The ripple effects extended beyond just Evan and Clara. Colleagues who had ignored or enabled the behavior faced scrutiny. Prior assistants were validated, their experiences acknowledged. The company implemented stricter policies, safeguarding others from manipulation and abuse of power. I allowed myself a quiet smile. My actions had not only reclaimed my dignity, but had also protected countless others. There was power in that, a profound satisfaction in knowing that the storm of betrayal had been converted into a force for accountability. In the days that followed, Evan's attempts to reconcile or plead were met with silence. He had chosen his path. Clara's downfall became the talk of the industry, a cautionary tale of arrogance, betrayal, and the ultimate price of deceit. And I stood firm as a wreckage, unbroken, resolute. I had faced the deepest betrayal, navigated the murky waters of deception, and emerged not only with my dignity intact, but strengthened by the very fire that had once threatened to consume me. Life began to settle into a quieter rhythm. I focused on myself, on rebuilding, on reclaiming spaces once tainted by lies. There was no need for revenge anymore. The truth had done its work, its consequences precise and devastating. One evening, as the city lights blinked through the window, I realized that the most potent form of justice isn't shouting or spectacle. It is quiet, methodical, and unyielding. Evan and Clara had learned that lesson too late. I allowed myself a deep breath, the tension in my shoulders finally loosening. I had navigated the labyrinth of betrayal and deception, and I had emerged whole, stronger, wiser, unshakable. The storm had passed, and in its wake, I found not emptiness, but clarity. Not loss, but reclamation. Not despair, but justice. And in that quiet triumph, I knew I had regained something far more valuable than revenge. The unassailable knowledge that my life, my story, was mine alone to write. Weeks passed, and the initial shockwaves had settled into a quieter, more deliberate rhythm. The chaos of exposure, confrontation, and corporate investigation had faded, leaving behind only the tangible aftermath and the clarity of survival. I found myself standing at the edge of a small park near my apartment, morning light catching the dew on the grass. The air was crisp, a subtle promise of new beginnings. I thought about the whirlwind of the last month, the betrayal, the evidence, the meticulous unraveling of Evan and Clara's carefully constructed facades. Every betrayal had been catalogued, every manipulation exposed, and yet the most profound victory wasn't in their downfall, it was in reclaiming myself. Evan had tried to return, timid, pleading, offering excuses that no longer held weight. Clara's world had imploded under legal scrutiny and the cold precision of his husband's lawyer. Careers destroyed, reputations dismantled, assets stripped. And I watched it all, not with glee, but with the quiet, firm satisfaction that justice, moral and legal, had been served. But the most unexpected shift was internal. I realized the depth of my resilience, the clarity of my own strength. I had stared betrayal directly in the eye and refused to be consumed by it. I had chosen action over despair, precision over revenge, strategy over emotion when it mattered most. Evenings were no longer punctuated by the gnawing ache of doubt or fear. I poured energy into work I loved, revisited old hobbies long set aside, and reconnected with friends whose support had always been steadfast but overlooked. I began volunteering with a local mentorship program, helping young women navigate professional challenges, a subtle echo of the justice I had enacted, now extended as guidance rather than retaliation. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about Evan, not with longing, but with the weight of memory. The man I had loved, the life I had believed in, was gone. In its place was understanding. Love is not enough when trust is absent, and strength is defined not by what you endure, but by what you do with the truth when it is laid bare. Clara faded from my daily consciousness even faster. His arrogance, his betrayal, his hubris. All that remained was a cautionary tale whispered in industry circles. His hubris had been his undoing, and the law, the truth, and moral accountability had finished the work I had begun. I found myself laughing again, quietly, softly, at the absurdity and beauty of life's twists. A colleague told me a humorous story at lunch. A friend shared a small victory of their own. Each small joy, each subtle connection, reminded me that life moved forward, even after the deepest rupture. One Sunday afternoon, I went for a long walk, watching the leaves flutter in the gentle wind. My reflection in a cafe window caught my eye. The woman staring back was different. Not hardened, not cold, but refined, aware, capable. She had survived deception, navigated betrayal, and emerged stronger. She was Lila Murphy, in full command of her story. I allowed myself a small, private smile. There was no need to dwell on anger or revenge anymore. The consequences had spoken for themselves. The storm had passed. And in its quiet aftermath, I realized the truth I had always known. The strongest love is the one you cultivate for yourself, the kind that refuses to let betrayal define your life. I had loved, I had lost, and I had acted. But most importantly, I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my narrative. The future stretched ahead, uncharted and bright. Opportunities awaited, connections to be nurtured, moments to be seized. And as I took a deep breath, feeling the sun warm my face, I whispered to myself, almost like a vow, "This is just the beginning." And in that clarity, I understood something profoundly simple yet liberating. The story of my life was mine to write, no one else's.